Welcome, Pewter Report readers and listeners, to another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. I'm your host, John Ledyard, along with my boss, the one and only, the esteemed Scott Reynolds. Scott, how are you on this morning? We are a couple days away now from Raiders Bucs.
Yes.
In a return of John Gruden to his former stomping grounds in Tampa Bay, where many people thought for a while that he would eventually come back and coach once again.
Well, technically they're playing in Las Vegas, but
That's
yes,
true.
He is playing his former team. And I asked him about that on the conference call literally just minutes ago. So I've got some fresh information for you Bucs fans, which is kind of cool. So, one of the things that John Gruden was asked was on the conference call. I'm not going to name any reporters' names, but he was asked about the Tuck rule and about playing Tom Brady for the first time since then. And he said, well, I think they misspelled the name of that rule. and he was asked, how often do you think about the Tuck rule? And he says, well, not at all. Like, if you were me, would you want to think about that, play as well? And it's kind of funny because right after that, he ended the call. So I didn't ask that question. I don't think John wanted to go down memory lane against the Patriots in that snow game against, Tom Brady and the Charles Woodson sack fumble, which wasn't because of the Tuck rule. I asked John how it was facing his former team, the Buccaneers, for the first time. And he said that's water under the bridge. He certainly loved his time in Tampa. His family still resides here in Tampa, but really, he's grateful for the opportunity to be here.
Been a long time, yeah.
He's back with the Raiders now, and
right.
And he didn't say it, but he did have an opportunity to come back and coach, and he chose the Raiders instead of the Buccaneers to replace Dirk Cutter. So he's happy doing his thing with the Raiders now. The other question I asked him was about the Bucs defense. I said, John, you certainly know a good Bucs defense when you see one.
Yeah.
How does this Bucs defense stack up to what you were used to in the past? And he was just effusing praise for Todd Bowles, John. He said, listen, defenses don't do that to Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
So it's quite a performance when you put on that tape. Bowles calls blitzes from everywhere. He drops defensive linemen. He blitzes safeties. He presents a real challenge, and he really admires Todd Bowles for the type of game that he called and has called this year for the Buccaneers. Right. So a lot of respect for the Buccaneers organization and for this 2020 Buccaneer team. Had a lot of nice things to say about Bruce Arians. Got to know him a little bit throughout the years. Interesting, as Bruce pointed out, John, on the conference call today, that John Gruden's dad, Jim Gruden, actually helped him get the Temple head coaching job way back in the day. And that's something that Bruce went into in depth in his book, The Quarterback Whisperer. But he did mention that today on the conference call.
Right.
A lot of mutual respect and love between Arians and Gruden, and should be a really fun game on Sunday Night Football between the Raiders and the Buccaneers.
I agree. Yeah, it's a lot to look forward to, and we have a ton to talk about on this podcast. I already see people throwing in questions about the matchups and how we're going to stop the run, and how the defense matches up with the Raiders' offense with Ruggs, and we're going to get to all that on the show. I just want to welcome you for coming into the show. Appreciate everybody who's here and all the people that have subscribed with us on YouTube. We have just raised that following greatly in the last few days and weeks, and so we're very appreciative of that. But also want to mention, if you're not subscribing to us on YouTube or watching us on YouTube, try to go over there and subscribe and watch us on YouTube if you can. It mean a lot to us. Also, if you're having trouble getting notifications, I went in and left some comments for people, and I already left some comments for people in the chat here too. But if you're having trouble getting our notifications when we go live, you probably subscribed before we started making some of the changes to our settings. So all you have to do is unsubscribe and then hit the subscribe button again, and you should be able to turn on that notifications. No problem. So if you're watching or listening to this as a podcast and you usually watch us live and you're wondering how to do that, that's kind of how you can get that done, and you can get notifications every time we go live. And we really appreciate that. It's been awesome having y'all in here and interacting with y'all and doing more of these live shows. It's been really, really cool and really fun for us. And we're going to make it, like I said, it's going to be a regular thing for us. And we'll talk more about that moving forward too, Scott. But one of the things we have to talk about right off the bat on this show is that there's a chance, and we won't put a huge chance on it, but there's now a chance, I guess, that this game would get moved or something would happen with this game just based on the fact that the Raiders have had a positive COVID test. Right tackle Trent Brown today didn't practice with the team, and he had tested. We don't know that he tested positive. He got put on the COVID list. I don't know if John Gruden mentioned anything about this to you, and I'll let you explain kind of the full context of the situation. But Trent Brown is basically on that COVID list. They're starting right tackle. He was injured most of the year. I think he just came back, and now he's on the COVID list. So unlikely to play this week. You'd think they have Damon Arnett, a corner, on there as well, but he had been on injured reserve before he got put on there. So they're coming off a bye, not quite sure what the contract chasing is going to show. It's probably good they haven't probably been around each other that much, but at the same time, there was some news about the Raiders O-line that John Gruden let you all know today on that conference call, right, Scott?
Yeah, he really did. It was big news, too. The entire offensive line, all 5 starters, had to go home and do some quarantining until they can do some testing. So, yes, this is some breaking news right here for you Buccaneer fans and Pewter Report fans that are listening to this live stream on YouTube or Twitter or wherever else you're hearing about it. The Raiders' starting offensive line was not at practice today, and that presents a huge problem for this Raiders team that has done a really good job scoring points. The interesting thing is they're averaging 30.2 points per game, so they're a high-powered offense. But I think the problem is their defense. They're giving up 30.4 points per game, so that's a big reason why they're 3-2 and not 5-0, for example.
Yeah.
And I think that again, going back to what John Gruden said, his respect for this defense is immense. And listen, Tampa Bay can get after the quarterback. We've seen that now with multiple sack games, the latest of which came against Aaron Rodgers, John, with 5 sacks. And so not having this offensive line at practice in preparation for a myriad of blitzes and different schemes and looks that Todd Bowles can throw at you really presents some problems coming off that bye week.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you talked about just what this what the Raiders offense has been able to do this season, but one of the things they've been able to do is they've been able to keep from playing, making mistakes as an offense. And that's something that the Bucs, that was kind of the thing that's plagued them for years and what they're trying to get over. The Raiders are eighth best in the NFL in penalties. They've only committed 7 turnovers, which is the same as the Bucs. Everybody's kind of in a glut in the middle there, but neither of those numbers aren't very high. So both teams doing a good job of that, but penalty edge obviously goes to the Raiders, although the Bucs were clean last week. And then the Raiders also 4 drops the entire season, Scott. I mean, they're tied for best in the NFL. So, I mean, this is a team that has not shot themselves in the foot much this season when they've had the football. And a big part of that has been the offensive line, even without Trent Brown, and without Richie Incognito, 2 of their best offensive linemen, they've been able to stay pretty consistent on that side of the ball. I don't know how much they've been tested, but and when they've been tested by top end talent, I think they've struggled a little bit more. But so far this season, Denzel Good and some of those replacements have held up okay, but you have to think the Bucs front is a whole nother test, even without Vita Vea in there. So both sides struggling with some injuries. Jason Pierre-Paul probably faces Colton Miller, although they're moving Pierre-Paul around and Shaq Barrett around now. And Shaq Barrett will go up against probably Denzel Good, who is the backup right tackle for the Raiders, who has not been very good during most of his career, but as is getting a little bit better in Las Vegas, I think. So matchups that on paper still look like they'll favor one of the teams that blitzes the most in the Bucs, the 3rd highest blitz percentage in the league, I think, according to Pro Football Reference. And then another team, obviously, that we were talking about Monday on the podcast, that they get the sacks to 22 on the season, that one of the highest marks in the league as well.
Sure. And I think the thing, too, and I asked Bruce Arians about this today on the conference call, about Shaq Barrett. And, granted, right now the Buccaneers have done a really good job of getting the quarterback, even without a whole bunch of production. They're 2nd in the league, tied with Baltimore with 22 sacks, just 2 behind Blitzburg, John. And anytime you can be anywhere near Pittsburgh in terms of getting to the quarterback, that's a really big accomplishment. So the Buccaneers are off to a really hot start. They've had multiple sack games against Carolina, against Denver, and certainly they had 3 against the Bears, 5 against Aaron Rodgers, his first 5 sacks of the season. So they've done a really good job of getting after the quarterback. But I asked him about Shaq Barrett's production. This time last year, John, he had 9 sacks and 3 forced fumbles. This year, he's got 3 sacks, 2 of which came in one game against Denver, which also includes a safety, no forced fumbles. And I asked him, I said, is this something to be concerned about? He says, no, he's just getting close. He's super close. He's been close on about maybe 3 others that, if he had just gotten one more step, then all of a sudden he's got 5 or 6 and you don't worry about it. So
Pro Football Focus has him as the fourth most amount of pressures in the NFL right now. Pressures is kind of a subjective stat, and you'll see it differently, but that was still interesting to me.
No, great point. And I think that I would be more concerned for Shaq Barrett and the Buccaneers if Jason Pierre-Paul didn't have 5.5 from rushing from the other side. So you got to remember, it's like Shaq Barrett had 19.5 last year, and Jason Pierre-Paul had 8.5. And actually, I predicted that Jason Pierre-Paul would lead the league in sacks this year, only because of the attention that Shaq Barrett is getting. And let's not forget, John, this is an important thing to remember. When you look at Shaq Barrett, last year was his first big year getting to the quarterback and having a Pro Bowl caliber year. He's never had to face that type of attention year in and year out. This is now year 2 after that. Jason Pierre-Paul has been a double-digit sacker multiple times throughout his career. He's used to the attention, and it doesn't faze him. He knows how to beat double teams. And I think Todd Bowles does a good job of moving him around inside and out and kind of giving him some of those good matchups. So I'm not too worried about it right now. I'd be more concerned if JPP had like 2 sacks or 2.5, but with 5.5 and 3 from Shaq Barrett, those bookends are getting it done.
Right. I think JPP third in the NFL, I want to say right now, in sacks. So the production definitely happening for him, as he promised us before the season that it would. Like I said, the Raiders playing mistake-free football. Not only mistake-free football, they are playing extremely efficient football this season, Scott. It is very tough for me to say. Like, people ask, are the Raiders good? I don't know. I know they've lost to teams they shouldn't have lost to probably, and they've beaten teams I wouldn't have expected them to beat, but I don't know if they're good or not. I mean, I'm just looking at some of their numbers for this team, and this year they have the highest completion percentage in the NFL.
73% for Derek Carr. And you know what? Last year he had a really good number. He was completing 70% of his passes, 70.4. And the thing that I liked about Derek Carr is last year, 21 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Anytime you're 2 for 1 or 3 for 1, you're playing pretty good at the quarterback position. I think the difference, John, last year was that they didn't have the big play capability, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit.
Yeah.
But when you stick on the turnovers and playing mistake-free football, right now you got to be impressed. Derek Carr, 11 touchdowns, 1 interception, and completing 73% of his passes. So anytime the quarterback can take care of the football and give it to his guys rather than your guys, that's good. Why they have a winning record, and that's why they were able to beat a team like Kansas City.
Right, exactly right. And what's crazy about the Raiders this year, and you were mentioning the different, last year they've been an efficient offense. I think that's been true about Carr through most of his career. He's been efficient, but he's also been very hesitant to go down the field. And this year, the 5th highest yards per attempt average in the NFL this year. So this is a team. We have to kind of ask ourselves at this point, Scott, like, are the Raiders suddenly, and even John Gruden had fun with this after last week's game. He's like, yeah, we threw the football down the field a little bit for all you Pro Football Focus people. And I'm not sure if it was a knock because they just hadn't thrown the ball down the field. But now these are the numbers for them this season, okay? Yep. Carr is tied for 26th in the league of 35 qualified quarterbacks on deep ball attempts. So he is not throwing deep very often still, even after last week's game. He is 9 of 15 for 374 yards on passes of 20 yards or more this season. So he has the 10th most yards on attempts of 20 yards or more this year, despite being 26th in attempts. So he's hardly doing it at all, and he's unbelievably productive when he does. But here's the other catch. 4 of 6 of those 9 of 15. He was 4 for 6 last week against the Chiefs, or 2 weeks ago against the Chiefs, for 219 of those 374 yards and 2 of those 3 touchdowns. The 3rd best adjusted completion percentage in the NFL when he goes down the field. So he is barely doing it. He's terrific at it when he does it. He's accurate at it when he does it, and they're getting huge chunk plays when they do it. But they've hardly done it in any of their games this season, and almost all their production has come in one game against the Chiefs secondary that looked lost in that game, to be honest. And I just have no idea if it's sustainable. If it is, the Raiders are one of the scariest teams in the NFL right now, I think, because On offense, because, and we'll
Sure.
get to their defense in a second, but on offense, because they're going to get their offensive line back healthy eventually when this COVID thing passes, and they may have most of them for this game. We'll see how the tracing goes. But in the offensive line is one of the best in the league when they're back healthy. They're going to eventually get Richie Incognito back. They've got great weapons in the passing game. Brian Edwards will be back probably not this week, but maybe the next week. And they have Henry Ruggs and Hunter Renfro's great, and Darren Waller and Josh Jacobs. And if Derek Carr is going to be efficient and be aggressive, I mean, he's going to be back to the Derek Carr we thought maybe he was early in his career when we thought this guy's one of the next great young quarterbacks in the NFL. I don't know whether that's going to be consistent, though, Scott. I'm just being honest. I need to see a way bigger sample size with Derek Carr before I'm going to buy into him transforming into that type of a quarterback.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt about it. And, I've got some pretty good contacts in the Raiders organization, if you know what I mean. And, I talk with those contacts quite a bit. We talked at, say the Senior Bowl, at the East-West Shrine game. We talked at the Indianapolis Scouting Combine in February. And we kind of talked about the Raiders offense and Derek Carr, because I didn't know if Derek Carr was someone that was a possible trade candidate for the Buccaneers. So there was some talk that the Raiders were going to go hard after Tom Brady, and apparently they did, but Tom said, nope, I'm looking either at the Los Angeles Chargers or I'm looking at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Once the 49ers said no, and once he knew that he was leaving the Patriots. So, I inquired about that offense. And from what I understand, and the numbers kind of bear that out, Derek Carr just didn't have any deep weapons to throw to. It was a dink and dunk offense. It was the kind of the classic West Coast offense, the short underneath stuff, the intermediate stuff, but not really much deep because they didn't have a deep threat. And the numbers bear that out. Tyrell Williams had a 15.5 yard average last year. He was the only target that had 10 catches or more that had yards per an average of 13 or more. You had Darren Waller at 12.7. You had Hunter Renfrow at 12.3. This year, it's a completely different story. Renfrow is at 14.2. Now, Waller's taken a step back because he's been more of a possession guy, and he's been a marked man after his 1,000-yard year. He's only averaging 8.7 yards per catch. But Nelson Aguilar, who's from Tampa, 3 touchdowns, averaging 18.5 yards per catch. And Henry Ruggs, the first-round pick, when he's healthy and on the field, averaging 29.5 yards per catch. Now, that's due to that 4.27 speed, John, that awakened you and myself and everybody at the Combine. So I think that now that he's got those deep threats, they are throwing the ball down the field more because they have guys that can just simply get down the field and make some plays. And Derek Carr, to his credit, when he is taking those shots, is hitting them.
Yeah, it's a very interesting matchup. To me, I honestly might be more worried about this matchup for Carlton Davis if he does fall Henry Ruggs, which I'm not even sure he's going to, because Jamel Dean, I think, is faster than Carlton Davis.
Dean,
exactly. So in my opinion, I'm like, man, I'm not sure, exactly how the Bucs choose to defend Henry Ruggs. He hasn't really, like you said, the Chiefs game was great, but until then, he hadn't really made a huge impact. So it's hard to know how much attention you give a guy like that. And I think it's something they have to be aware of for sure, where he is on the field each and every play. But to me, the big deal in this offense is Darren Waller. Like, if they don't defend Darren Waller, and if they choose to defend Darren Waller with Jordan Whitehead, I don't think it's going to go well for the Bucs. It has not been Jordan Whitehead's strength, and I think they're going to have to find another way to defend in these situations if they want to be successful.
John, I'm not Todd Bowles, but I was a Pop Warner defensive coordinator. So I've
heard that.
I have, yeah, and it was a damn good one too. I can show you some film some stats that would blow your mind, but I digress. But no, what I would do just from a traits in a size standpoint, I would put Jamel Dean on Henry Ruggs. I would put I think Nelson Aguilar is really their most dangerous weapon because he works the red zone really well. He's the most experienced receiver they have on their team. I think Carlton Davis would draw his assignment. And then Hunter Renfrow operates in that slot. And so Sean Murphy-Bunting is going to get him. So that's how I would match it up.
Who do you put on Waller?
Well, if I was Todd Bowles, I would go with Jordan Whitehead because that's the flavor of the month. But I tell you, Antoine Winfield would be the guy that I would give a shot at. Now with Waller, it's going to be a size mismatch either way because you've got Winfield at 5'9", Jordan 5'9.5", 5'10", and Waller's around 6'6". So
Right.
you're looking at a size mismatch with either one of those guys. But and I tell you, I like this Winfield kid, man. I think he's got some sticky coverage ability, and why not see what he can do against the tight end? You know that Jordan Whitehead can cover the tight end, maybe not as well as you want him to, but he's got experience doing it. Why not put the rook out there and let's see what happens?
Well, now you got me thinking, and so I feel like I got to state my case for how to defend these guys. And I agree with you that I would want Jamel Dean as often as possible on Henry Ruggs. I think that's how I would want to defend it. But the other thing that I think that I might differentiate with you on this is that I really would like to see how often Carlton Davis can match up with Darren Waller, because to me, I think Hunter Renfrow is a good player, but like, where he's going to be, and he's probably going to play most of the time in the slot. And it's the same thing with so you're going to see Sean Murphy bunting against him, and I think it's probably a better matchup there than it is there for Davis inside there. But you're going to see Darren Waller play all over the place. I mean, this guy lines up out wide, double-digit snaps every game this season. He's lined up in the slot, double-digit snaps in 3 of 5 games this season. So they're going to play him all over. Your choices, you can't put a linebacker on the guy. That's not how the Bucs really use their linebackers. So I don't think that's going to be an option for them with how much they want to blitz and how much those guys drop into middle zone coverages and how much they're going to need him in the flats against Josh Jacobs and how good a receiver he is. So I think your options are that Whitehead, which I'd be terrified of, or Scott, Antoine Winfield plays in the slot or in man coverage against Darren Waller.
Okay.
And Mike Edwards plays more football in the middle of the field, and Jordan Whitehead doesn't play as much in this game. That would be a big move. I'm not saying you roll out of the gates with it.
John, how many snaps has Mike Edwards had this year?
It's 52, and he's got 2 picks.
How many picks does he have? Yeah, I'm just saying.
So,
I think you're onto something there.
To me, that's like if you don't feel comfortable putting Carlton Davis on a tight end most of the game, then that's how I'd match up with it. Realistically, I'm sure we'll see a good amount of zone coverage as well, trying to stop, like Justin mentions right here on cue, the 2 deep looks and trying to stop Henry Ruggs' speed being a factor, and if the Raiders are going to go vertical, be a factor. Yep. I don't think I'd come out giving them a ton of respect. Not that I'm saying this team can't consistently hit big plays. It's just something we've seen really one game from the last several years for Derek Carr. And so I would want to make him do that and continue to do it and hurt you in that way. And I'd want to make sure that we took care of the efficient stuff, because like I said, the Bucs or the Raiders are still a team that is completing a ton of underneath stuff.
Oh yeah, and when you talk about completing underneath stuff, that almost lends itself to zone coverage, right? Because you want those guys on their landmarks. The only thing that I would say is with Carr's penchant to get rid of the ball quickly, zone might be the way to go. But it's so tempting, John, with the COVID hitting Trent Brown and possibly keeping this offensive line out of practice. So tempting to just go man and
send the house
and send the linebacker, because otherwise you're having Devin White drop in coverage, which we've agreed is not his forte. Devin White better in forward and drive than reverse, right? And Levante David can do it all, but boy, you saw what he could do as a blitzer last week with his first sack and a half of the season. So, I'm an aggressive guy as a defensive minded guy. I love Todd Bowles' blitz schemes. I love when he can rattle quarterbacks and get after it. And I want to test Derek Carr's ability to not turn the ball over, just like you did with Aaron Rodgers last week. 2 interceptions after having none. Well, Derek Carr only has 1 interception. Let's see if the Buccaneers can make him end up with 3 or 4 by the end of Sunday night.
Yeah, Derek Carr has actually out of nowhere been good under pressure this season. It is a small sample size, and most of his career, it's been one of the struggle issues for him is his game kind of dissipating when he gets pressured a lot. It was his big issue coming out of college, and it really kind of followed him throughout his career. So he hasn't been pressured very much. Actually, one of the few starting quarterbacks in the league that's been pressured less than Tom Brady by a couple pressure dropbacks, I think. So I still think you can rattle the guy. I mean, they rattled Aaron Rodgers, and he'd barely been pressured all season long. And, he'd been great when he was pressured. And so I think that this is still a defense that can wreak a lot of havoc. Like you said, the Raiders are probably going to be down 2 of their best 3 starters on their offensive line for this game. And so I think you have to still be aggressive and dance with the girl you brought. But at the same time, I don't think that the Bucs can't match up. I think it's a different type of team to match up with than the Packers because they have more than one guy that's a threat, and they have different types of players. The Packers,
yes,
you can talk about their weapons and their passing game all you want, but there's not different types you have to worry about. Like Hunter Renfrow is not the kind of guy you want Carlton Davis to see in coverage a lot. It's just not like his MO.
You're right, John. And not just that, but the Packers didn't have a Darren Waller, a guy with size and speed at the tight end position.
Right.
They can line up in line, flex, or line up out wide. And they didn't have a guy in Henry Ruggs with 4.27 speed that as I'm writing about in my SR's Fab 5 for Friday, when I preview the 4 matchups to watch, one little sneak peek, I'm saying Jamel Dean, if he's going to be locked up with a guy like Henry Ruggs, he's got to be the Secret Service. And what I mean by that is you can't allow one shot. You got to be perfect. Yeah. And because Jamel Dean has the speed to keep up with a guy like Henry Ruggs, I believe, and the physicality, at least to slow him off the line of scrimmage. But Henry Ruggs is the kind of guy that if he only has one catch, it could be for an 80-yard touchdown, and that could be the difference in the game.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot to talk about for sure. And I think, at this point in the season, 6 weeks in, I definitely think that one of the things that we can bet on is that this Bucs defense will come to play in this game. It will bring the energy and the physicality, and the Raiders down a couple starters will have to respond to that. And you would hope that the Bucs are able to eliminate some of those weapons down the field in the passing game and make the Raiders that team that has to string together a ton of different passes. Yes, sir.
I heard you say bet.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Something I would bet on.
Did you hear that? I heard it, Bucs fans. Did you hear it? But bet. Let's talk about bets. Ever since I started out, people have asked me for advice on all kind of things covering sports. It's usually who's going to win, what team should they bet on, whatsoever. You got the Patriots or the 49ers this week. You got the Bucs or the Raiders. Well, the best piece of advice I can get to anyone is where you're betting, because it's just as important as who you're betting on. That's why I always tell people to bet at MyBookie. That's where I bet, Bucs fans, not just because they're a sponsor of the Pewter Report podcast. It's where I do my online gaming as well. They've got deposit matches, free bets, huge cash prize contests for you to take advantage of all season long. NFL action, check. College football, check. Plus, they got a mobile-friendly website and top-of-the-line customer service, making their platform a one-stop shop for all your betting needs. MyBookie offers action on everything from championship futures to NFL in-game live betting. So make sure you're covered every step of the way. Congrats if you're one of the ones to cash in on their generous early season odds on the Lakers to win the NBA championship. Sign up at MyBookie today. When you do, use the promo code Pewter to claim a deposit match dollar for dollar all the way up to $1,000. It's a bonus designed to give you a little bit of help and a head start on your winning season. That's promo code Pewter to claim your bonus when you make your initial deposit. Stacked UFC cards, presidential prop bets, all the major sports, and more await you. Sign up today to begin your winning season exclusively at MyBookie.
Scott, we've talked a lot and sung a lot of praises on the Raiders offense, and I want to move to the defensive side of the ball, but I have to say this one thing that I was meaning to get in on the last part.
Sure.
I think I'm more worried about Henry Ruggs type of receiver at this point in the season than I am about those true number one outside type of receivers. The Michael Thomases, the Allen Robinsons, the Devontae Adams. I think the Bucs have a guy to match up with those types in Carlton Davis.
Oh, yeah.
These in-between types, these speed types scare me. I mean, look at these guys that are coming off the Chargers practice squad that are getting deep down the field, that are beating the Bucs corners. Those guys were just fast. That's what they had. Look at the last game with Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Twice got behind the Bucs secondary. Once, I don't know if Carlton Davis was kind of reading it and maybe playing a little bit in a trail position to try and make a play on the ball. I'm not sure, but still, I think MVS's speed gave them some issues. I think back there, those safety, flipping your hips and turning and running and finding the football. It's not something they've been challenged with a lot this season. I'm a little bit worried about that. I'm a little bit worried about the big play. I don't know whether Carr will pull the trigger on him. That's where my question is, but that's where I'd be a little bit worried. I thought they had handled Devontae Adams a lot easier than they handled the speed of Valdes-Scantling. Rodgers just couldn't quite connect on a few of those throws. So lots to think about as we move through there. By the way, if you're jumping on here, if you're watching us And if you've been watching us on YouTube, please go and subscribe over at YouTube. If you're watching us on another platform, try and switch over to YouTube if you can. Jump on there, subscribe to us on there. Click those notifications on so you know every time we go live. If you have subscribed before, the notifications might not work right away. So just unsubscribe, hit subscribe again, and then click the notifications on. And that process should be able to alert you to whenever we go live with these podcasts. And we're going live a lot. Tomorrow we've got a live show going out at 7 p.m. We're going to be on with the Athletics, Tashawn Reed, who covers the Raiders. Mark and I will be talking to him. He covered Florida State too for a while. So I think Mark will probably have some off-topic questions.
And John, the reason why it's 7 is because he's a West Coast guy, right?
That's right. He's a West Coast guy.
That. Yeah.
Yep.
So
normally we will be at
4
4
p.m.
Right.
But 7 p.m. tomorrow.
Right.
So I guess we're talking about the Raiders defense, John.
Yeah.
And
does this group do anything well, Scott?
No.
They are 31st in DVOA right now per Football Outsiders. So it is right off the bat. It's not a star. I've got a list of. I looked up everything I could trying to find. So I found one stat to be optimistic about the Raiders defense. I had them 31st in DVOA. Pro Football Focus has them as the worst team tackling grade this season.
And John, hold on 1 second. I'm going to hold you right there. That's the one thing John Gruden really complimented the Buccaneers on was their tackling, especially the linebackers, Levante David and Devin White.
Right.
And when you said that, it really made me remember what Gruden said about the Bucs defense and the tackling. And you could almost sense now that I replay it in my mind how jealous he was about that and how envious he was about Tampa Bay's tackling, which really has been superb. Without a preseason, it was so many young guys, Sean Murphy-Bunting, Devin White, Mike Edwards when he's out there, Jamel Dean. These guys are tackling like absolute pros, and it's making a big difference. It's something I asked Bruce Arians about. It's not just the front seven when it comes to Tampa Bay's number 1 ranked rush defense. It's also the corners on the perimeter, making sure those backs don't get big yards down the sideline. So
elite run defending secondary, elite at that. And I just watched. I just watched a film breakdown from Darius Butler, who's a great follow on Twitter, on the Cowboys, not corners, just have played in the league for years, some of these guys, not getting crack replays roll. Safety gets cracked, corners got to replace, and they're standing on their heels 10 yards deep, and then they're wondering why every run gashes them. It has not been an issue with the Bucs so far in their secondary, so that's been something they've been terrific at. But I mentioned the missed tackles with the Raiders, 56 missed tackles this season per Pro Football Reference. I think they were 3rd worst for them. Like I said, Pro Football Focus has them as the worst tackling grade. They also grade like technique and stuff like that, so something to think about there. 29th in run defense grade per Pro Football Focus, 25th best run defense in the NFL per just regular statistics, rushing statistics, 16th in pass defense, so we're back league average, 26th in pass rush grade per Pro Football Focus, and 31st in coverage grade per Pro Football Focus, 25th in yards per attempt allowed. So teams are gashing them on a pretty consistent basis. 29th in sacks, tied for last in the league in takeaways. They have 3 takeaways on the entire season. 28th in blitz rate. So not only do they not get sacks, they also choose not to blitz very much, which if that sounds familiar, the Packers are 27th, I believe, in blitz rate after last week. So they're still down there too. 8th in pressure rate, though. So this is a team that has not gotten many sacks and not blitz very often, but they have pressured the quarterback on a good amount of the time. So and they have guys, they hustle, they play hard.
Yeah, you saw that in Kansas City a little bit, right? I mean, Patrick Mahomes had to scramble from the pocket. He wasn't as comfortable as we usually see him. John, real quick before I get to my list, which is shorter than yours, but can you explain what DVOA is? Because you're more of a stats and analytical guy. I know what it is, but I want to hear it from you.
Yeah, it's basically a metric that Football Outsiders came up with years ago to determine the value of a defense, and they attribute like critical factors. For example, like the Bucs defense last year. This might be the example that makes it most realistic for fans. Is the Bucs defense last year had a great DVOA by the end of the year. I think they were top 5.
And what does DVOA stand for?
Defensive value over adjustment. So they adjust for these factors like the Bucs turning it over whatever amount of times and being on short fields and how well they do
Right.
in those certain
Right.
situations.
So basically, the defense isn't penalized.
They aren't penalized as much, correct?
If they had to give up a field goal
Mhm.
when there was a pick that was run back to the 25-yard line.
Right. They're penalized a lot less for allowing
fields.
a 25-yard drive as opposed to like a 75-yard drive, and
Right.
different factors, and for allowing a touchdown in garbage time, or a meaningless score late in the game, or when backups are in, things like that. So they just factor in a lot of things that tell you what the true value of a defense is probably closer to as a whole, rather than they're 30th in scoring. Well, there's a lot of factors that could contribute to why, including the fact that they still count scoring.
Well, at the same time, it's subjective. It's subjective, but it's an interesting measurement, right? Because it does factor in things like short fields that you have to defend.
Right. Yeah. At this point in the season, we have a large enough sample size that I would say it's pretty reliable in terms of determining who the top is pretty reliable, and the bottom are determining who the extremes are. And in the middle, I would say teams probably still have a chance to rise and fall a little bit, but I would say it's pretty safe to assume the Bucs will be a pretty consistently good defense for most of the rest of the season. Obviously all defenses are prone to some level of unpredictability, per most analytics that are out there. But anyway, all that to say that, on the Raiders side of it, they are bad in this measurement. They are one of those extreme, while the Bucs are, I think first right now. We said the other day, the Raiders are second to last. And so that's the biggest extreme in this game, even though both offenses have been pretty efficient and steady and share some similarities if the Bucs could keep those penalties down and the drops down. But on the defensive side of the ball, they could not be really on more opposite ends of the extreme in this game, Scott.
Right. Well, you're right. And really the big stat to me is the fact that they're giving up 30.4 points per game. I think that to me is an even bigger measurement. And I got that from John Gruden. That's one of the things I learned from John Gruden back when he was coaching and I was covering him, was number one, total defense, yards allowed. That's fine, but yards don't win games. Points do. And they've scored 30.2, so the Raiders are a formidable offense, but their defense, when you're scoring 30.2 and you're giving up 30.4, you're a 500 football team, and that's something that the Raiders want to avoid. They were 7-9 last year, showed some improvement from Gruden's first year at 4-12 when they were in complete rebuild mode, but they drafted a slew of Clemson players, John, and one of those players is Clelin Ferrell, who Ferrell. I believe doesn't have one sack this year.
Right.
And right now, Max Crosby has actually been the better pass rusher. The kid from Eastern Michigan, he had 10 sacks as a rookie and has 4 this year. And John, they've got 6 sacks. He's got 4 of them. Yeah. And they really can't get to the ball. There's a familiar face over there that Buccaneer fans will remember, Carl Nasty. That's what I used to call him, Carl Nassib. Who I'm sure would love to get a sack against Tom Brady because it's a trophy, but also to show his former team what he can do out there in Oakland. But so far, he's been a very overpriced, underachieving guy. Only has half a sack this year, and he's splitting time with Ferrell opposite of Max Crosby. So Max Crosby will go against Tristan Wirfs. It's a matchup to watch. Wirfs really rebounded nicely after Khalil Mack in that Packers game. You didn't hear Wirfs' name at all, which is a great thing. No penalties, no sacks allowed. And we saw Tristan Wirfs revert back to normal, which is a hell of a rookie right tackle, John.
Right. Oh yeah. It's one of those areas where I think the Bucs have to win in this game. We mentioned the pressure rates. I think some of that is because, even in the last game, if you look, Patrick Mahomes is kind of leaking out the back of the pocket and making it easier for these rushers to get the edge a little bit. Max Crosby is a very interesting player because he probably plays as hard as anybody in the league, and we know Carl Nassib's in that conversation as well. Clelin Ferrell is also a dog. Those guys all will play extremely hard.
Hasn't produced like they wanted him to yet, especially as the 4th overall pick in the draft.
Right.
John.
Oh yeah, and I thought that pick was terrible when they made it. Even though I liked Ferrell's game, I just did not think.
Here's some inside scoop for you: the Buccaneers were scared to death that the Raiders were going to take Devin White at 4. They were like this. Right. And it was not just a surprise that they didn't take Devin White, if you remember, but that they drafted Clelin Ferrell that high, 4th overall. And when the Buccaneers saw Ferrell's name off the board at number 4, the Buccaneers picked 5th. They were doing cartwheels, jumping jacks, backflips, whatever in the draft room. They were ecstatic to get Devin White at 5. That was the target all along. And if you remember, Buccaneer fans, we had him in 4 out of our 5 mock drafts. That's right. I was going to put him in all 5, but honestly, just just
you
because,
also.
well, yeah, just because of the chance the Raiders could have taken him. I wanted to put somebody else in there. I put Josh Allen in there in mock draft number 3, but we came back with 4 and 5 and had Devin White. And boy,
you also would have been quite furious had the Raiders drafted Devin White. Would have ruined.
Yes.
Ruined.
I was watching the film. It's funny when I first watched the film. And Pewter Report we were the first ones to have Devin White go into the Buccaneers in January because it was right after the East-West Shrine game. We actually had some pretty good intel from our St. Petersburg coverage of that game that put us, that put White really in that spot for us.
Yeah.
And so aside from that intel, I'm going back and I'm watching film because I watched him quite a bit at LSU, but I watched the highlight reels and I'm like, this guy is a Todd Bowles linebacker, man. Yeah. He is full tilt, straight ahead, blitzing, run defense, tackle for loss kind of guy. So, and we saw that again on Sunday. And John, the Raiders, I'm not saying that they wish they would have drafted Devin White, but you look at the missed tackles, you look at the ability for the Raiders to give up big runs.
They would have drafted somebody else for sure.
Well, yeah, and that was something that John Gruden really mentioned on the conference call today. Was he was asked to compare the Chiefs' offense versus the Bucs. He's like, well, they're completely different, but they're both high scoring and they both have pretty good balance to them. They both can run the football. And he said that's really been the hidden story in Tampa is how they can run the football. Now, Buccaneer fans, like I shared on a previous podcast, then I saw him run. I'm a believer. I mean, Rojo has made me a believer. This guy is a legit running back and a guy that is going to push for 1,000, 1,200 yards. I think this year, 3 100-yard games in a row. And this offensive line has got a lot of pride in it. And they want to see Rojo get to 4 100-yard games in a row. And right. I think if that happens, what that means is the Buccaneers have gotten an early lead, like they did against the Packers in quarters 2 and 3. And then you can really run Rojo in the fourth quarter. And that's where I think that's where that fourth 100 straight rushing game could be in the offering, John.
Right. Yeah. No, I think it's going to be a breakout game for the receivers too, though. The Raiders are overmatched at cornerback. They have been for a long time. LaMarcus Joyner, they paid him a lot of money and they refuse to play him at safety. Their safeties are not very good. They have 2 of the lowest graded safeties in the league. A Pro Football Focus. I've watched plenty of Jonathan Abram. I know that he was a first-round pick. I don't get it. I didn't get it then. I definitely don't get it after.
He's a highlight reel guy. He
gets
great.
The tackles occasionally.
He looks great for the 3 to 4 minute highlight reel, right? But then when you really break down the film and you see all of his deficiencies, that's why you can't scout from YouTube, just because. I mean, he looks great for 3 or 4 minutes. You can take all the cut-ups, all the knockout hits, all of the splash plays. You see his athleticism flash, but it's the mental lapses and the plays he doesn't make that vastly outnumber the plays that he does make.
Right. He does kind of actually remind me a little bit of Jordan Whitehead, except Whitehead's a better tackler, I think. Whitehead around the box, around the line of scrimmage, blitzing. I could see them both being successful in those roles. But you put Jonathan Abram in coverage, and I just think things get exposed quickly. And I think the same thing for LaMarcus Joyner. I was just talking about him, but he's a guy that the Raiders have played in the slot consistently over the last 2 years, and he's just been shredded in the slot. He's just not a good man cover guy. Yeah. And so I think that's where LaMarcus Joyner kind of loses me as well. And if he's going to match up with Chris Godwin and the Raiders are going to play any semblance of man coverage, although I know they've typically been a zone heavy defense in the past, that's not the formula, I don't think, for success. Damon Arnett, who is a rookie who has struggled. I already mentioned he is out on the COVID list as well. Yeah. I don't know whether he'll be back. I don't think he will be back for this game. We'll see and keep monitoring our eye on that as we get closer to the game. But Trayvon Mullen's been decent this season, I think. But again, this is just not a team that they haven't had great cornerback play. They've drafted him. They haven't had great cornerback play, for a long time. Nevin Lawson's seen a lot of the snaps. A career kind of journey was in Detroit for a while and has just been an okay player. And so they really haven't had shutdown guys at corner. They don't have them in the secondary. They haven't covered well as a result. They don't make splash plays in the secondary. I think this is the type of defense that Tom Brady can have a ton of success against. And I think that Chris Godwin and Mike Evans can eat. I'm writing about it. I'm writing about it tomorrow, Scott. There's going to be an article about it on Thursday. Everybody's wondering what the heck is going on with Chris Godwin's production and even more so with Mike Evans' production. Right. And I'm telling people, yes, I get it. Why? But calm down. Good times are coming for both of them. Better times are coming. The Giants aren't that far off. And we all know what Mike Evans does to the Giants.
That's a great point, John. And John, there's 10 games left,
That's right.
There's 10 games.
Better
You
days
know what
are
else? You know what else is left in terms of time is hurricane season. There's another hurricane down there by Bermuda, right? I mean, here we are in Florida. We're not in November yet. We still have 10 days.
Yeah.
The election's coming up, but so is the end of hurricane season, but it's still here. So storm season is here. Don't wait to review your insurance policies. Call Briar-Greaves Insurance, which is family owned and operated for over 30 years in the Tampa Bay area. They've served this area so well when it comes to home, auto, boat, life, commercial, and flood insurance needs. Mark Cook has them as his personal insurer. I'm going to be making the call next week to have Briar-Greaves take a look at my homeowner's insurance policy, which is kind of under review right now. A lot of homeowner companies are going through cancellations and non-renewals of policies. I'm in that category. It's happening to me right now. No joke. They're leaving Florida and they're increasing premiums significantly. I'm going to call Briar-Greaves and speak directly to either Briar or Sam for that personal touch, for the information and the best rates. And listen, Mark has told me, and I believe him, if I've got a better rate with the company I'm with right now, they'll tell me to stick with them. If not, maybe they'll give me the better deal. And if that's the case, they're going to earn my business. But you know what, John? It doesn't hurt one bit to make the call and just have Briar-Greaves review your policy. The folks at Briar-Greaves are big Buck fans too. That's the cool thing. They're proud sponsors of this Pewter Report podcast on pewterreport.com because they care about Buccaneer fans and they're big fans of the team. Visit BriarGreavesInsurance.com as you see there on the screen, BriarGreavesInsurance.com, or call them today at 813-876-4166. That's 813-876-4166, Briar-Greaves Insurance. And John, I was going to call them yesterday. Unfortunately, I had some very tragic news. My mother passed away. We've had some fantastic comments and questions in this this chat today, this Pewter Report podcast. Here we are getting a whole bunch of these questions and comments from Bucs fans, and we love them. We put them up on our YouTube stream so you can see some of your feedback. It helps you interact with the show, and we get to put your viewpoints out there and answer your questions, which is really fun. It's a new addition to the Pewter Report podcast. But I also had a lot of great comments today and condolences and well wishes from Pewter Nation out there, from you guys on pewterreport.com. My mom is a huge Bucs fan, and she loved watching the Bucs defense take care of business on Sunday. We used to talk after the games. I'm going to miss those chats going forward, but she got to see one hell of a game on Sunday, and it really made her happy. So, as fate would have it, my mother lost her husband, my stepfather, about 8 years ago. It happened literally right around the draft. I remember I believe on the second day of the draft. And that's been really hard on her. She was in a lot of pain. She had a debilitating neck condition, but God works in really mysterious ways. As it turns out, yesterday was my mother and stepfather's wedding anniversary. So what a day to go be reunited with him. What a great gift from God to reunite them. And I couldn't think of a better anniversary gift. I miss my mom terribly. I love her. And I love you guys very much for all of the outpouring of love and support that you, John, and Mark, and Grizz and Matt have showed me, and Hugh and Allison at Pewter Report, and just all of the Buccaneer fans. I've gotten texts from Jason Light and John Robinson, the Titans general manager, Ben Steele, the Falcons tight ends coach, just everybody at WDAE, and just really wanted to thank you. It means an awful lot. It was a sudden loss. At the same time, she was 77. We all have to go at some point, but we'll miss her, and I'm going to be writing a little bit about her in my Fab Five. Plenty of Bucs content, plenty of Bucs Raider preview in that. But if you allow me to indulge you for a few paragraphs, my mother, Judy Ann Dunleavy, is the one who really got me turned on to football. We used to fight over the Kansas City sports section, the Kansas City Star sports section. The only way I could get it first was if I actually went out and grabbed the paper off the driveway in the morning. If she got to it, if I was being lazy, then I'd have to wait till she was done with it. So she was a huge football fan. Started off being a Redskins fan. I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area for a little while, moved to Kansas City in 1980, became a Chiefs fan, and then And then when I moved to Tampa to cover the Bucs in 95, she came down in 96. And we all know what happened in 1996, John. Tony Dungy came and the Buccaneers turned it around. It's just crazy. But everywhere she went, the football team won Super Bowls and championships. So love you, Mom. Miss you very much. And again, thank you, Pewter Report family, for your outpouring of support today. It means an awful lot.
Yeah, we love you and certainly have your back and completely supporting you during this time. And, it sounds like she was an awesome woman and a huge Bucs fan that supported this team through thick and thin. And I think it'd be the coolest thing ever is if the last game that she saw here on this earth is the one that starts to turn things around for this franchise. And knowing that she and her support was definitely a part of that was pretty neat. We are going to close out with our predictions for this week's game. Bucs and Raiders predictions. I think I got one wrong, the Bears game, but I think I think I'm 4-1
you got
on
the Packers right, so you're tied with me and I think everybody else. I think I think Mark is still
he's 3-2. I think
3-2.
Unless maybe he got the Packers one wrong too. He got the Bears one wrong, and he got one wrong before that. What did he say? He might be 3-3 now. I think he is 3-3.
He might be. We'll have to see.
He's 3-3. Yeah. So, but you and I are doing well. I think. Are we both 4-1, or did you got the Packers wrong, and you got the Bears wrong?
I get the Packers and the Bears. Yes. So you're in the pole position, John,
right now. So this is a big vote for me.
Yes, it is.
I honestly think, Scott, there will be some level of a little bit of a letdown for them coming off the Packers game. I don't think it's to the point that they'll lose the game. I think they're going to win this game. I just think that I would think that it comes out and it's just a little bit of a slow start and then things pick up as the game progresses. It is hard to play a football game and not commit any penalties, any turnovers, any sacks. All those things are not going to happen every time. And so when you've done that and then kind of, you're back in an adverse situation, it's going to happen, whether it's good calls or bad calls or things like that. I just think it's a huge game for the Bucs. I don't think this is a great football team for sure, but I think it's a solid one. And the Bucs need to take care of business in this game. It's great to go out and dominate the Packers, but we've said it before. It's about what this team does consistently moving forward.
Yeah.
The new kind of direction that they establish as an organization isn't enough for just to say one game, okay, that's it, we've arrived. It's the start of something, but that's something, it can't be that start of something unless it continues, right? And so
that's right.
I think it's crucial that they come out and they play really well in this game and they win this football game and they start to string these games together because they don't have that many great opponents this season. They really don't. I mean, looking at the rest of their schedule, this team should be, at worst 10-6, at absolute worst. And if they continue to be able to beat opponents that are good but better or worse than Green Bay, then they should be even better than that, and they should win this division. And this is a game I think they have to do that. I don't think it necessarily is going to be super pretty right out of the bat, but I do think that eventually it will be. I think it's going to be a 30-17 victory for the Bucs. I think they pull away late and make it pretty decisive.
John, I'm going to go with 48. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm going to go with 48-21.
Wow, 48. You think the offense has an absolute field day, huh?
Well, I want to say that just for old time's sake, because that was the score in Super Bowl 37 for Bucs fans. That included 3 pick sixes, right? I mean, the Bucs offense was good enough that day. They put 28 points on the board. Take away the 2 pick sixes by Dwight Smith. Take away the Derek Brooks pick six. They still would have won the game 28-21. So I'd love to say 48-21, just for old time's sake. But you know what? I don't know if that's going to happen. I'm going to go with a more reasonable, manageable score of 37-20. I still think the Buccaneers outclass the Raiders. They win by 17. I think it might be a different story if that place is packed. If the Death Star is packed, John, it might be a different story. But the Raiders, unlike the Buccaneers or any team in Florida, no fans in the stands still due to COVID-19. So I think that type of sterile environment doesn't really help the Raiders at all. And I think Tampa Bay is ready to play some really good ball from here on out. And 37-20, I think the Buccaneers win by 17.
There we go. Here we go. It sounds good to me, Scott. I think we're going to I would guess we'll see 5 Pewter reporters pick the Bucs to win, which maybe scares me a little bit, but
still a long season.
But I think that, that's right. On paper, I do think that this is clearly a situation where the Bucs are at least the same, equal on offensive side of the ball, and with more explosive power, I think more upside basically to their offense, and just so much better on the defensive side of the ball that I think they're going to have to really shoot themselves in the foot and fall back on their old ways. We say old 2 weeks ago ways to lose this game, very similar in fashion to the Bears, except probably even more so. And so we will see how the game progresses. Obviously, we'll have the predictions from the round table of all of us on Pewter Report and some of more of our in-depth analysis of the game. We'll have that up. We'll have that up on the site on Friday
afternoon. Yeah, Friday morning, I'll have my fast forward rewind section where I'll take a quick look back at the Packers, then a much longer look ahead forward at the Raiders, in addition to having my 4 matchups to watch in the Bucs-Raiders game. And for you folks that are going to stay up Sunday night, and we know you're going to take off work on Monday. Come on now. You're going to stay up and watch the game and then call in sick to work on Monday after a big Bucs victory. We're actually going to have a show Sunday night after the game. So be sure to check that out live. Time to be determined. That'll depend on what time the game ends. But
as soon as we can get live.
As soon as we can get live. And if you don't catch that show, the good news is you'll have the latest Pewter Report podcast, that post-game podcast to listen to Monday morning as you fight rush hour on your way to work.
Yep, absolutely. We'll have tons of great content coming next week. As I said, Thursday at 7 p.m. That's tomorrow. 7 p.m. We are going to talk to Sean Reed of The Athletic. Mark and I are going to sit down with him. We're going to talk about the Raiders and the Bucs, how they match up. He will have lots of perspective on the Raiders situation, and we'll keep updating you on our site and on the podcast about this COVID issue and how that might affect the game moving forward, with the Raiders dealing with that and their offensive line getting sent home from practice today as they kind of quarantine and test and contact trace and see what the effect of this situation with Trent Brown is. So, it's been a lot of fun. We thank you all for tuning in, subscribing on YouTube, and following along with us, and we'll catch you again next time. Thanks so much for listening to another edition of the Pewter Report podcast.
Love you, Mom. Out.